Arcade Heroes.
Hey, Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com here, and this is my interview with Eugene Jarvis about the Cruis'n franchise. Now, I'm doing this introduction separately because I made an amateur mistake. We recorded our interview on Zoom, and for the very first question, I forgot to hit record, recording the meeting in Zoom. I was using a second screen recorder, which is part of the reason why I forgot, but that recorder didn't actually pick up anything I said, just what Eugene said. So that's what you'll see for the very first question, and the question I asked is, how did the Cruis'n franchise get started? How did all of this go from an idea to an arcade game that you can play in a place like this? And so that will be the first question, and then from there it'll have both mine and his audio through the Zoom meeting. But thanks for tuning in and enjoy.
Yeah, it was. I had been working. I started out in video games back in 1980 with Defender and Robotron and those games, and yeah, always had a love of the driving games, and they had very sophisticated hardware. I loved Hang On, Outrun. I guess there was even like a Turbo. I think that was what Tato. I don't know. That was Sega Turbo, and there was Hard Driving from Atari, which was like the first 3D driving game, and I played that quite a bit. And it was frustrating though, because with the technology at that time, there'd be a corner and you'd have to like turn like half an hour before the corner, otherwise you go off the cliff. I remember, I don't know how many times I just drove off the cliff, so I was going, man, I'd love to do a 3D driving game, and I want to do a game where when you turn the wheel right, you actually turn right. It's like, is it really that hard? It's like, and so yeah, so that was kind of the inspiration, and there was this new technology that I was researching called 3D texture map, which was just beginning to hadn't really gotten into the arcade industry yet, but it was like in maybe 1990, and so it's like, hey man, we can get be the first guy with this new technology and have like these photorealistic driving games. And I was really into the photorealism thing with Narc, and of course then there was Mortal Kombat, and just having that real live action, and having and I was thinking, man, you could drive, you could take pictures of the real world, you wouldn't have to drive in some fake world of green hills and three rocks on the inside of the corner that you blew up on, and so so that was kind of the inspiration. I really kind of loved the Outrun game, but I was kind of a frustrated driver with that, and so it was really kind of inspired by Outrun, but kind of take that idea and go into 3D texture map, and that was kind of the inspiration there, and kind of make a more casual game that was anybody could drive. Anybody could get out there. When you turn left, you turn left. You turn right, you turn right. You didn't have to be an expert, race car driver or something. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's like you can, and it's weird. It's like that's like, well, you play the game, and you turn, like you have to, you forget to turn half a mile before the corner, and then you wreck, and everybody goes, well, yeah, well, that's because it's a simulator. And I go, well, this doesn't simulate any driving I'm familiar with. You know, but it was like the simulator. The thing of a simulator meant something like really hard. It was almost like the game. There wasn't really a game there. It was just a kind of a torture, you know, that you would learn how to utilize this incredibly unrealistic driving interface that was incredibly difficult, and somehow that was true realism or something. But it wasn't. It was just bad technology.
But on the with that, from what I've read, Cruis'n USA was the first game or the first driving game to use texture maps that you had digitized from real world objects. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. it was kind of came out the same time space as Daytona, and I think Daytona was still, kind of animated, artist generated animated graphics and stuff. So yeah, I think it was truly the first. And the reason why, one thing I just love the realism, and also it's a hell of a lot easier. You don't have to,
Right.
have, rooms full of artists trying to create, a fake Grand Canyon. You can just go to the Grand Canyon and with a camera. It's like, that's and it looks better. So
Right. Right. And that also makes me wonder, because like these days, developers have all these tools, and you have the internet to be able to access, textures and assets, and you have Unity and Unreal Engine and all that stuff, but you didn't have anything like that. So I mean, what was that like as a developer? What did you have to do to make this, turn these images into a playable game?
Yeah, so it was, there was no, this is even before Adobe Photoshop. This was before, any kind of 3D software, Maya or 3D Max or
Blender.
all of those things. It really, nothing existed. And so basically we had to make our own tools completely. And we had to figure out how to, get the, they did have like digitizing boards that were really flaky, and on a, you'd have to kind of like pet them and like, nice girl, don't don't bite me today, like the massaging of your 3D board and the cables, and it was really a nightmare trying to get, but you kind of get it all going and get a good grab, and your lighting had to be, when you're filming things out there, you don't realize like 90% of the time the lighting is super crappy.
Right.
You're like filming, say on the north side of a street, looking south, you're just filming shadows. Yeah, it's just a bunch of gray stuff. There's so many, on any given day, look out of the sky in any urban area, it's just smoggy, hazy crap.
Right.
So you really got to like try to get the best lighting possible. Like you shoot at noon, it's all flat, there's no shadows. So you'd have to, shoot in the afternoon hours to get the shadows, get the contrast, get good lighting, get some life to the objects. Otherwise, they just become grayish monochrome garbage that has no depth to them. You need to get those shadows and lighting contrast. So you had to really, rather than, today we just kind of fake all the lighting with all our great lighting tools. But then you actually had to go out and shoot something in good lighting or light it good in the studio. And so that was all that, kind of the Hollywood struggles there. But you kind of get your techniques down. And it was amazing how cool we actually were able to make stuff with, basically we're taking canned shadows. It's called, today they call it baked in lighting, and we baked it in with the sun. It's like
truly baked.
And exactly, we got a little baked ourselves. So, but that was a real challenge because it's so easy just to have everything look like crap, and you want to get the biggest, because the resolution in those days. I mean, we were shooting with, NTSC cameras and stuff.
Wow, yeah.
And so the resolution was pretty crappy. So you really had to get things as big as you could to get, get as many pixels in that object, get as most information as you could to really, so you had to be very careful about framing the scene, make sure you're really capturing everything at the biggest possible size to get that information, to get that richness of stuff. But it's amazing how beautiful you get the stuff, the right lighting and the right day at the right time, and the right colors, and then you juice, obviously you got to juice the contrast and saturation, like your Apple phone. I mean, I love using their little photo editors, and you take some really crappy shot in the shade and turn it into my God, that's amazing. I can't even recognize myself. It's like
right.
And turn my pasty white face into nice tan.
Right, you've been at the beach all day.
So that was, so we had to kind of do all that stuff from scratch, and as far as the polygon, getting the geometry into the game, I mean, that was a real struggle. because there weren't any 3D art tools, like geometry tools. So basically, when we started out, actually we were typing in coordinates. We had to have the artist type in
Wow.
coordinates, and like they got into, they kind of learned how to. I mean, artists generally are not, you know,
Mathematicians.
incredibly great at math. They're good at art.
Yeah.
Programmers are great at math, but they're really bad at art. So you had to somehow
meld it together.
Get them, get the artists trained as far as typing in numbers, and they really, it's amazing how that happened, and so we were able to, in a very crude way. Luckily, in those days, system throughputs were low, and so you only needed, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10,000 polygons in a scene. So, but still, that's a lot of polygons to type in the coordinates.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean,
so we developed some tools. The programmers developed some tools to basically generate roads and generate like the curves of roads and the up hills and down hills, and you can kind of just, it's like throwing a carpet out there in space and
right,
and kind of flexing it. So it's a very primitive version of what we have today in Maya 3D Max and the other 3D art tools. So, we kind of, did that, and that was kind of cool. We could automatically generate stuff. And then since it was kind of painful, we developed processes that we could, create sections of road and then, just flip them. Like, you could flip the back and the front and then hook that on that one. So you get, right curve, and then you got a left curve. And
right. It's just
so
weird.
we could recycle, the road pieces and, just chop, just throw another straight section, another straight, like, let's have a long straightaway. Like, so even at that crude level, we were able to, with a lot of coding, basically writing primitive versions of today's art tools. And it got us very, we ended up reusing a lot of stuff. And we even reused entire geometries of some areas. And like we had deserts. I think about Cruis'n USA, we had, Arizona desert, and then and I think we just took the same geometry and took out the cactuses and threw cornfields on them. And that was Iowa. It's like, I mean, so
it's all flat anyways.
So we did, we did some tricks there, and it's incredibly realistic when you look at it. And so we also had to, at the time there was no 3D hardware either, 3D texture hardware. So we had to design a chipset, because just the software, you couldn't really do it in software. It would take, 5 minutes to frame. Nobody's gonna. So we designed a chipset that was fairly crude, but pretty fast for its time. It was probably significantly more powerful than the original Sony PlayStation. And we found a trick that we could, rather than using triangles, we used quads.
And that's what the Saturn used, isn't it? I believe.
Did it?
I believe so.
Yeah. So we used quads, and so basically you could, kind of, with very little overhead, you could almost have 2 triangles instead of 1. And it worked pretty good. The problem with the crude math at the time was occasionally a quad would go. This thing would happen calling going non-planar. Like today we have non-binary people, and in those days we had non-planar quads, and that was kind of a disaster, because it would just kind of like, you get like part of it would just mathematically it wouldn't, it'd be an error, and you get a little like white line or something for part of the render, because the math just, once you go non-planar, it's
no going back.
Yeah, it's no going back. So we had to this final solution was it was very simple. We said, well, shit, how, we have these little these holes. They're like black holes in the screen, where those these
Almost like dead pixels.
yeah, yeah, and so it was like, well, wait a minute, because like we were erasing the screen after every frame.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, well, just don't erase the screen. Chances are those
They'll stay
pixels
there.
will be pretty similar to what they're supposed to be.
Huh.
So it was like, and then we saved all this throughput by not erasing the screen. So
Wow.
it was a win-win. So a lot of crazy things we did to make this 3D system work. That I think it ran at 50 megahertz.
Mm-hmm.
Where today's systems are running at 5 gigahertz. So
Right.
about I guess it's about a hundredth of the power of today's systems.
Right.
Um, and but it was pretty it was exciting. Cruis'n USA, and I guess most we ran at 30 hertz for most of the game, so that was
Wow.
it wasn't ideal, but it was pretty damn good for
Got the job done, right?
the time. And it was amazing. People just were they couldn't believe the realism and the being like that first generation. So many first impressions of this, and I remember you have to, obviously it's a racing game, so you have to drive at like 120 to get through the thing.
Sure.
And a lot of people that would start out and they would get like, oh my god, and they would drive at like the speed limit. They'd drive like 50. Like, well, you're not going to win the race at that.
Right.
Yeah, it was weird, and some people would get kind of motion sick because they never saw that kind of it's weird. I think the more you played it, the more you kind of got used to it. But
Mm-hmm.
saw that for the first time, some people get a little queasy, especially like on a first person viewpoint, which is really, that was amazing. When you're driving in first person, they had the
Mm-hmm.
camera that would flip into the first person, and it was like, oh my god, it was so intense.
Yeah. And that reminds me too, because Cruis'n USA had a motion version. How did that come into being?
That was probably in retrospect, a temporary insanity. But I mean, it's not like the project was hard enough, And
Right.
like, hey, now we're going to create a motion system, and so it was pretty cool. I mean, it was like this full ass car, and
Mm-hmm.
full body and everything, and that little monitor in it. And I mean, that thing really chucked you around too, and that was pretty amazing. It was a pretty amazing. I think we sold a few hundred of them, and it's a hell of a collector's item today.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
Do you have one?
That was fun. We have one down in the shop. It's frozen like this. We got to like figure out how to get some WD-40 in there or something.
Right. Grease it up.
Something, I don't know, but it's crazy. Let's see, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, so then kind of the game structure, originally it was kind of inspired by Outrun, and so an Outrun was, you start at one point and then you just keep going, and
right, branching out.
And I think there's branches, and so forth. And so it was like the idea was, okay, you're cruising USA, and so this was going to be like a linear race from San Francisco to Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of detours here and there.
Right.
And
That's
so, that was, and then, it's funny, we put out a test and it did pretty good. But one thing we noticed was that, just in normal play in an arcade, people will continue at a certain rate, If it's a really good game, maybe they'll continue half the time, It's a really bad game, they don't even finish the first race.
They walk away.
And what we noticed, like probability wise, we do a lot of auditing on games, and see what probability wise the odds that you'll make it to Washington D.C. were like, if you have a 50% fall off for, I don't know, it's like 12 tracks or something. I forget how many tracks there are.
14, I think.
And at 50% fallout, it's like 1 out of 1,000 people will make Washington D.C.
Wow.
And only 1 out of like 200 people see the last half of the game. And we worked like months on this crap, and we also, and there were some great tracks. We go, man, I really like driving. We're from Chicago, so it was like, man, I love that Chicago track, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
and so you'd have a favorite track, and you just wanted to drive that, and you didn't want to like start in San Francisco and go to your favorite track for
Right. Yeah.
20 minutes. You just wanted to play, you know, Death Valley or whatever, you know. And we decided like, and it was weird. It was like that whole thing was like, okay, you make them pay to go through the game. You know, like everybody wants to see the whole game, so you've got to extract this cash from them. You know, like to make, you know, if they want to see Washington D.C., they gotta pay. You know, like they gotta pay, you know, $10 to get there. You know,
Right.
and once they do that, then they'll leave and never play it again. You know, and so it was this kind of like punitive design philosophy, kind of like grocery stores where you always have to start at one aisle and then weave your way through the entire store to find, you know, like, you know, and like the milk is, you know, half a mile down the path, you know, like, geez, you know.
Just need
But you know, then we realized like, well, maybe, you know, that really wasn't fun for us. You know, maybe you don't have to be so punitive in the design process. Maybe, you know, the crazy idea, just let people do what they want to do. You know,
Right.
like they want to drive Chicago, let them drive Chicago. They want to drive, you know, DC. You know, like just let them do their thing. You know, and you know, will we go broke or will they even be happier? You know, like
Mm-hmm.
it was unknown. You know, it's kind of like this new frontier of like, you know, letting people do what they want. You know, like
Freedom.
can our business model survive? You know, and and we put it out there, and it turned out just people loved it. You know, and the other thing we did is we brought out kind of the philosophy before then. A lot of the Sega games and Namco games and so forth. The philosophy was you'd make them buy two driving games, you know, and Daytona was like this too, where you couldn't buy one Daytona. You couldn't buy one. You know, you had to buy two, and you know, you make them buy another one. You know, and you know, screw them and make them do what they probably wouldn't just buy one. So you screw them, make them buy two. You know,
Right.
that's the business model. You know, and we were kind of like, well, there's maybe a lot of places that only could afford one driving game. You know, and so we're like, well, just let them buy it, you know, one, two, whatever, you know, let them do whatever they want, you know, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know, again, like a revolutionary idea of like letting people do what they want. And turned out it was just amazing success, and um, it actually worked. So,
Right. Yeah. Obviously. And how many Cruis'n USA's sold?
I think it was around like 26 or 27,000, something like
Wow.
that.
That's
Um, it was pretty big over a period of 2 years. And then we did Cruis'n World, you know, and that was like another, you know, 26, 27,000. And then the last one of the original trilogy was Cruis'n Exotica.
mm-hmm.
And that one we created a whole new hardware system, kind of amped up our graphics game, and
Right.
had some really cool shaders and stuff in that system.
Right. Yeah, that one has a very distinctive look to it, and I had one a little while back, and also had that the control panel with the speedometer, and where it had the what was it? The numeric LED display showing your yeah, your how many miles you were going, and it also had the LEDs and everything. That was really cool.
Yeah, we got carried away. That was like an injection molded, and we were like diamond polished. I remember it was to make it really shiny. You wanted to make it kind of like shiny steel metal, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we added powdered aluminum to the mold.
Mm-hmm.
Gave us this real sparkly, shiny, you know, kind of sort of like metal flake paint. So it had this really nice metallic like feel to the injection molded dashboard.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a little bit of a sparkle in there, I
Exactly,
guess.
exactly. Now we worked a long time on that. I mean, it's amazing how you get obsessed with, you know, like details like that. You know, and
Mm-hmm.
probably the average guy looks at it and like it's just shiny gray. You know, you know. You know, it's like you wonder, like sometimes, are you really just wasting your time on all this crap?
Right.
You know, it's like, but it's like at the time, it's super important, you know, to get that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, powdered aluminum sparkly look, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, who knows what kind of difference that would make in the
Yeah,
sales or in
yeah,
people
yeah,
playing it and all
yeah.
that and whatnot. And another question is I was thinking about on the hardware,
Yeah.
obviously Cruis'n USA was, maybe you could call it infamous for promoting the Ultra 64 hardware, even though
Right.
it didn't
Right.
use anything close to the Nintendo 64. I mean, my guess is
Yeah.
somebody in Midway or Nintendo was saying, "Oh, this has to be on here." But did you ever get anything from Nintendo as far as hardware went, or
I think it was
what was their
several years
involvement?
later, you know, a year or two later, when we, Midway did the N64. So we kind of beat out, I think the N64 took a lot longer than Nintendo had hoped, and
Hmm.
so they were hoping to, they had bought the rights to our entire system and everything, and I think they didn't really like our, kind of scrappy um, quad quad thing. It wasn't
Right.
it wasn't it was a little too, gritty, and it was, it threw out a lot of polygons. They just maybe weren't perfect, and so
Hmm.
they redesigned the whole thing, and I guess worked with Silicon Graphics
Right.
to make that the N64. And so it took them a couple more years, I think, to get that perfected, and then um, we're going to work to port that game over to the N64,
Hmm.
and and uh, and I thought it was a really pretty nice job. The Cruis'n USA and Cruis'n World, I thought were really fun N64 games.
Hmm. Right. And on Worlds, that brings the question to mind: how do you approach a sequel to something so successful like Cruis'n USA?
That was really pretty easy. You know, because I mean, Cruis'n USA was just such a killer game, and maybe we could have probably sold it for another 2 or 3 years,
Hmm.
but we're like, oh man, we got to do the next one, and so we wanted. Obviously, the natural thing is just to go all over the world, and so this was pretty funny. Well, it was cool too. So we got all our artists, and we actually sent them with video cameras all over the world,
Oh,
and we sent
it's a
guys
nice job.
to China and China, and that time, like going to China was kind of a big deal.
Right.
They were just opening it up to tourism, and so they actually the only way you could go to China and visit was it would be you had a guide
Mm.
that accompanied you like 24/7,
Uh-huh.
and it was like this. It was a set tour, and you had to go. You went to these different places, and um, and it was almost like you're a pioneer, because it was
Hmm.
like super exotic at that time to visit China, and they didn't have a lot of Western tourists and stuff,
Right.
and the guys really had just an amazing experience, amazing adventure going to China, and we had guys go to Europe, and actually for Cruis'n Exotic, I went with one of our artists to Japan, um,
Nice.
and we had great fun there, filming all the stuff in Tokyo and
Hmm.
all the temples and everything, and some of the giant. I remember there was this famous giant Buddha of Kamakura,
Hmm.
and we took the train there, and you have these adventures. We get to the train station in Tokyo. There's like a million train stations, and you have to
Right.
like get to the right one. And then and not many tourists really go on the regional, local trains and stuff. So you
Hmm.
get there. There's nothing written in English.
Right.
Not even in like Latin lettering. It's all kanji and um, Japanese symbols,
Hiragana.
and like if you aren't used to that, you're just like so you're trying to like figure out where you're going, and you have to like find some brochure or something, there may be some note you took, or you took a picture of what it looked like, from a brochure. So then you knew what the name was, like kind of like, it was like a house, and then like a, that thing that looked like a tree, and like, and trying to leave like two knives and a, and an X, and like, and trying to like visualize the, because it's such a foreign concept to people that grow up with the Latin alphabet, the
Hmm.
pictogram type Chinese and Japanese words, and where the object is a word, and
Hmm.
But so you'd kind of do a pattern matching to try to find the town you're going to.
Right.
And by the time you figure that out, the train probably was already gone.
Yep. It's already nighttime.
Oh, so it was an adventure. It was just beautiful scenery. The temples were so amazing, and Tokyo was such a bustling place. It was pretty amazing.
And is that why you called it Cruis'n Exotica? Because you had such an exotic adventure to
I think so.
put
We
it together?
wanted to. Well, yeah, and it just like we already had done Cruis'n World, and like Cruis'n World 2, like this is like
Cruis'n Galaxy.
right. Exactly. Yeah, we almost did that, but it's like, but that was probably number 4, But we went to Mars, and we went to the Amazon, and we went to, I guess probably Japan may have been the less exotic of all of them. I went to
Atlantis was one, wasn't it?
right, Atlantis. Yeah, we're under, driving into the ocean. Alaska, we had this really cool Alaska track where the killer whales are jumping over you, and
Right.
you're driving through glaciers and stuff. Yeah, so it was a great. So those first 3 games, it was just so much fun to do them, and it was kind of a logical point to, we're cruising the universe or cruising Jupiter. We just feel like maybe that was just too far out, so
Right.
it was kind of a logical stopping point for that first trilogy.
Sure.
Quit while you're ahead.
Right. Well, I mean, you kind of did it with. Isn't Superbikes 2 take you to Jupiter on the? Isn't there a space track where you?
I think there is. There is.
So.
These some of the the same old tricks.
Sure.
Trot them out 10 years later, everybody forgets.
Right. And also to that, it's like there's so much humor in the games, and a lot of it's subtle too. And I know people complained about running into animals and watching them explode into steaks or something like that. People that maybe don't have a sense of humor in that regard. But it's like, what was there stuff that you wanted to put in there that had to be taken out either because of complaints or just wasn't enough time to finish it? I mean, obviously one of the funniest things is at the end of Cruis'n USA, you come across Bill Clinton in a hot tub. What's behind the humor of the cruising games?
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of the whole spirit of it was kind of fun and have a good time, kick back. And it's not like, even though it is kind of a race, it's fairly forgiving, like if you can be really bad, and then like if the last 30 seconds you finally get your shit together, you might even have a chance to win,
Sure.
So it was like trying to it's not just super hardcore, it's more fun, and I kind of have that kind of tourism and just the adventure of it and seeing the world and adventure tourism kind of aspect of it, and have a little party at the end. It's like
right. Right. And that leads us to Cruis'n Blast. I mean, it was a bit of a period between Exotica and Blast, but of course I'd say the Fast and Furious games are cruising in spirit. So what led to the development of Blast?
I think it was it'd been I guess the crazy thing was I guess it'd been about 20 years from the release of Cruis'n USA when we started working or started thinking about it. And we'd been working on a lot of Fast and Furious games, and it was some really, really great driving games. And just you can't, you don't want to spend your whole life doing the same thing.
Sure.
And it just seemed like, what? I mean, I was feeling nostalgic, and all the cruising games were getting kind of old at that point. And,
yeah.
They were disappearing from the arcades, and like made me feel kind of sad,
Sure. I destroyed one. I had a Cruis'n World that I first converted to a Tokyo Drift, and then when supercars came out as a kit, I did the conversion that cut the top off, which
right.
That felt a little painful to have to do that with any old cabinets, but yeah, I totally know what you mean there.
Yeah, well, I remember when we did that, when we designed a supercars kit, and And, it was just, because I mean, there was a lot of the old cruising cabinets that the monitors were gone or the boards were
Yeah.
gone, and operators loved that. But it was, it is sad when you take a chainsaw to your baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, so I felt like, maybe, obviously the technology had really progressed, in that 20 years, and the stuff, we can do now with, the effects and the realism and just the crazy stunts and stuff. It just, it's just like, oh my God, maybe we can, kind of bring that spirit back of the crazy cruising type stuff,
The topness.
and yeah, over the topness, and just have bring back the experience, see if it'll do it, and write a new cruising song,
Yeah,
and
a catchy one.
I remember when we we were working on that song, and some of our millennial programmers were just like shaking their heads, like it's like, oh my God, you got to be kidding, bringing back disco, with this song. It's like, oh my God, this will never fly, but people kind of it was so it's funny, I felt like people had a lot of great memories
Hmm.
playing cruising, and so it was like, now those people that played back in the 90s were like starting families and having their own kids and stuff, and it was like, and I love kind of the generational thing you can get in the arcade, where you see the mom with their little girl on her lap, doing the driving game, or
Hmm.
the dad with his little boy, trying to make a man out of him. And, dude, turn left, turn right. Come on, what's wrong with you, man?
Right.
And the just catch that family fun type element, and have the generations where it's like, because normally like the kids are like, they're calling the shots, but then like the parents now can say, hey man, you got to try this cruising game, and and they'll be able to beat them for at least the first few games,
Right.
and you know so as I, just some nostalgia there, and I didn't know, the brand had kind of gone, you know, kind of, had was kind of losing its, it's been a long time, and so
Sure.
I was like, does anybody really remember it, or maybe I'm the only guy that has good memories about cruising? So I was worried a little bit there, but it's, there's got to be like operators out there, and when we released it, it was amazing. I think we got more hits on like our Facebook than ever, about
Hmm.
the cruising game and Cruis'n Blast, and so yeah, I remember we were trying to think of what to call it,
Hmm. Yeah, I know it went through a few name
It was
changes.
like,
So
I
it
forget.
is
Yeah.
Cruis'n Adventure, I think, was the first
Right,
one, and
Cruis'n
then
Adventure,
Cruis'n
yeah.
Redline.
Right.
Um,
And then it was like, and I was thinking, well, what's the spirit of cruising? It's like having fun, like it's like having a blast, like,
hmm.
how about Cruis'n Blast, like, and then we had a turbo feature, which had never been in cruising, so it's kind of
Hmm.
like, okay, we'll call it Blast instead of turbo, um, and so that was, it's kind of cool. It's like, fresh, and the single syllables are a lot better than adventure. Just
Sure.
it's just a little, too
Rolls
a
off
little
the
too
tongue.
generic, and it takes up too much space on the game. So yeah, I think that the name really worked, and then we the cabinet was the kind of the last thing that we wanted to do, something really crazy,
Hmm.
and so we wanted to get, we've been doing Jurassic Park, and which was our first kind of simulator cockpit
Right,
type
enclosed thing.
environmental thing, and it was just amazing. Like the audio was so great, when you get that enclosure, and
Hmm.
you have the subwoofers in your seat, bottom of your seat, and just like, oh my God, it's like you're sitting in the first row at the movie theater,
Hmm.
and
Having it blasted
playing
at you.
playing the movie,
Uh-huh.
and so it was like, okay, how can we get that, in the driving game? And it was like, well, maybe we'll, have some kind of like roof thing or something.
Hmm.
Um, and so we, had a great designer, Matt Davis, our one of our great, actually, he'd actually worked on that Cruis'n USA
Oh,
motion game. You know, if you can
wow.
believe it. And um, so we worked together on coming up with and it had to be reasonably priced, so we um, used roto molding technology, which was pretty cool. Sometimes it can look terrible, but sometimes it can look great.
When it works, it works.
Yeah. And so we kind of got a little bit of that cabinet feel, and there's always the problem of like getting in and out of it, and you don't hit your head on it.
Sure.
And then there was an issue of the adjusting the seat.
Yeah.
It was like,
Being
well,
curious why that one doesn't allow you to move back
right.
and forth.
And then the problem is we were worried about if we because we had this canopy on you, we couldn't move it back and forth, and so then somebody would get like crushed in the between the two of them. So we felt like, well, from a safety standpoint, we can't have the guy move the seat, so we have to find like the golden distance that works for everybody. And so we kind of like got a lot of people in there and try to figure out what was the golden distance. And part of the problem on the seat slides is often they're broken anyway, or people don't know how to use them, and they end up getting all the way back or all the way up. And so it's almost like, and we were really worried. We thought it was going to be a disaster or something, but no one ever complained at all, about the fixed distance, and it worked great. So that was cool too. So we kind of took some, and then we put LEDs everywhere. It was the final,
total light
final
show.
touch. LEDs everywhere.
Well, it really draws attention. I mean, I've had a pair of Cruis'n Blasts since 2017, and it's been in my top 3 every week ever since. It's often number 1. If it isn't, it's number 2 and whatnot. But that draws people in, and they see that, or actually they hear the game before they even get in the arcade.
Right.
And that's what I tell people when they call me and they're like, "Where's your arcade at?" Well, you'll hear us before you see us, and it's usually they're hearing Cruis'n Blast, because it's up at the front and all that. But then that really draws them in and has this interesting immersive effect that you just don't get with consoles and whatnot.
Yeah, no, it's so it really kind of we kind of captured that feel, and we got lucky, and the thing looked great. And sometimes life isn't always a disaster.
Sure.
Isn't always like oh, I should have done this, and why did I try that, and everybody, you should have known that was stupid. And sometimes you actually make the right decisions. And so Cruis'n Blast is one of those things that just everything worked, and we're still selling them. It's actually one of our top selling games still.
Really?
Wow. I don't know when it came out. It was it like
very end of 2016, very beginning of 2017. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so like 4 or 5 years later, and we're still. I mean, it's just very, very popular.
Wow.
And it's actually extremely popular in China, if you can believe it.
I know you work with a company called Eunice to sell over there, and they actually have a motion version of Cruis'n Blast, so that kind of comes full circle as well. Although I have seen, that one I guess hasn't been available in the US, the motion version. I've heard of some importing them. So I'm not sure if you've seen them here in the US or not.
I haven't, but it's very exciting model.
And doesn't that use the same system as your new King Kong game for the motion, or is it a different motion base?
It's a similar technology with the pneumatic system,
Okay, gotcha. And when you first tested out Cruis'n, it had a card system. What happened with that?
Right. So we were, we're just thinking, because it was kind of again, we're kind of inspired by the old, what was it, Initial D, and Ridge Racer and some of those.
Maximum Tune, yeah.
Maximum Tune, and like have the cards and kind of upgrade everything, and it had some appeal. It did improve their income, but it wasn't really. It was obviously those card systems are costly, and
right.
Those the dispensers are very costly, and cards cost, and it was just I kind of felt that it did, you know, it was good, but it probably with the extra cost, it didn't really merit it. So so we just went with the regular old, you know, the safe bet.
Right.
Safe
Okay.
bet.
Oh, so it was a save system. That's what I wasn't ever sure about, because you have Injustice and Minecraft right now where it's not a save system. It's the barcode thing. So I wasn't sure if Cruis'n was trying that or not.
Yeah. No, we were working on that, and actually, and there was a lot more work to do on it. You know, we realized like, well, you know, we needed to get the game out. You know,
Right.
to pay the payroll. You know,
Sure,
at some point you're done. You know, it's like the game is finished when you run out of money. You know, and time to ship it. You know, so that was another thing. So you know, we're still working on some stuff like that, but you know, probably for Cruis'n, we made the right move there. So.
And along those lines, of course, the one thing that a lot of people are interested in is the Switch port. And where you guys have traditionally been resistant to console ports, what brought about this Switch port for Cruis'n Blast, and what makes it different from the arcade port?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's always a tough business model, you know, and you know there is the arcade experience is you know somewhat different than the console experience. Although I guess on the Switch is probably the closest thing to an arcade experience, I would say. Well, you know, so we had it's funny. It was just really it was really inspired by the pandemic. So, you know, I guess this was last year, you know, and everything shut down in March and April. And I was like, wow, you know, this could be, even though, you know, some people thought it would be over in 3 months, you know, it seemed like if you really took a real view of it, and you could see like the chart of the COVID going up and up and up and up, you realize like this is not a 3-month deal.
Right.
And so, sadly, you know, the arcades are all shut down, and of course, you know, they didn't have any money either. So the last thing they're going to do is buy new games. And, you know, we had to figure out, you know, how we're going to survive, you know, for this time. And so an idea was, well, why don't we, you know, port Cruis'n over to the Switch, and maybe we could make some money doing that. And so we, you know, had some great programmers and stuff, and gave it a shot. And we were pretty pleasantly surprised. It was, I guess it's not officially released yet, but
it
really,
so much you can say right now, right?
Yeah, you know, there's some videos, you know, highlight reels and stuff on it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty amazing, the quality of the port, and you know, certainly up to the caliber of the N64 ports of their era, but you know, taken in this with the new technology and everything. You know, and it's you know, we I think it's a fun experience. Obviously, you're missing, you know, a lot of the cool environmental stuff and the steering wheel and all, you know, all the stuff we love about the arcade. But you know, I thought I think it was really a great job. We had to add a lot of material, kind of expand our 5 tracks into like, I don't know, 20 tracks or something. And it was, you know, I thought that it was really pretty cool. I was really impressed because I'm normally a kind of a skeptic about the arcades going to the consoles. And,
sure, me too.
I think because we had the original team working on it, you know, they just had this pride of ownership and wanted to make sure it was cool. And you know, what I love about it is, you know, today the console and the arcade kind of work together. You know, in the old days, it was like, well, everybody's gonna not come to my arcade because they could, you know, play Mortal Kombat on the
on their Genesis,
on the Xbox or something. And and it was true. I think when the arcade was this hardcore experience, the hardcore players did leave for the home systems, much to the detriment of the arcades, unfortunately. But today, all those, all the guys playing Call of Duty and, Halo and all that stuff, I mean, they're doing their thing. I mean, whether, doesn't matter what we do in the arcade, they're going to be out doing their thing.
Right.
And it's wonderful. It's just gaming has just expanded to be, it's rather than, if either war type thing, gaming has just expanded to all kinds of experiences, whether it's the arcade experience or everybody has a freaking mobile phone. They have an arcade in their pocket.
Right. Yep.
Why am I going to the arcade? I could just sit in the bus stop and play video games with my phone. It's like, but it's weird. Like the arcade has this really cool experience of, real controls and, still better graphics, I think, and, and better sound and all. It's just more of an experience, and it's the going there with your friends and having a great time.
Right, a much different social angle. Like, Nintendo's always talking about couch gaming and whatnot, and you automatically get that sort of thing in an arcade environment.
Exactly. So it's not a solitary thing. It's very social and fun, and so all those experiences kind of work together. And so we've seen in recent years that actually when you release like a home console game like Halo or say Mario Kart, has no effect. Almost, I think it even increases demand to play it in the arcade, because a kid goes in an arcade and goes, hell, man, I love Mario Kart. I play that on my Switch all the time. Well, let's go play there. And so I think Cruis'n will get that same boost. So I think really it'll be a great thing for the arcade experience.
Oh, awesome.
To have that N64 out there, because it's just, you really have to. It's all about branding and getting your brand out there, and getting in every channel you can, and it kind of, they all reinforce with one another. Kind of like Jurassic Park. You have the big movie, and then you have the TV show, and you have, I don't know how many console games were Jurassic Park, and probably dozens. And then, we come up with the arcade game, and it was the coolest thing ever, like 20 years after the show, after the movie.
Yep.
And so the experiences are very different, and can kind of work with one another, because you walk into the arcade and I know what Jurassic Park is.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, Cruis'n's usually my top 3. I have a Jurassic Park. That game's 6 years old now, and it still is also in my top 3 pretty much every week. It's one of those things that's just timeless, and it's easy to approach and play and have fun with, and people still want to have fun with it, even though they're all familiar with it. And I guess one last question is, what's the future of Cruis'n? Will any of this content from the Switch version maybe make its way to arcades, or maybe a different Cruis'n, or what do you see the future being for the franchise?
I think we just have to see what happens, and see if it, who knows. We're hoping it'll be successful. You never know.
Sure.
We're hoping we didn't create a disaster. So we'll just have to see. And obviously, if it's incredibly successful and there's all these Cruis'n players out there, we'll have to make a new arcade game, to get all these, keep these Cruis'n junkies going,
Sure.
So we'll we'll just have to see what happens, and that's the beauty of I wish I had a master plan, but there's too often in the arcade business you really can't have a master plan. You have to just it's just
go with the flow.
Just trying to stay. It's kind of like you're out there on a surfboard, and if you see a really big wave, it's like, what, I think I'm going to get into scuba diving. It's like
right. Anything else you might want to add to it all? Anything you've wanted to do with Cruis'n that you haven't been able to do, or?
Yeah. I almost think maybe an idea of maybe going back and kind of like Batman, you go back and do a reboot,
Sure. Cruis'n USA, the reboot.
The reboot, man. You have to the dark night version of Cruis'n USA.
Yeah, I'm opening, so I'll just be another moment. Sorry about that. Yeah, no problem. I'm at my arcade now, so I'm supposed to be opening the front gates there.
Dude, man, the players need to play, man.
Yes, they do. Gotta have my Minecraft that I just got doing something too. So
awesome, man. Let me know how that one goes. I mean, that's another another case where we kind of take the classic title and try to do something new with it in the arcade.
Right, absolutely.
Hope it cracks your top 3, man.
Yeah, me too. I mean, so far we're trying to figure it out on pricing, and so I started it maybe a little too high, and I think that scared away people who didn't truly realize it's like you get an actual card for it.
Right.
And so I've now lowered it down a little bit, but equalized the continues out because I was charging less to continue, more to start. And so we'll see how that goes. So I'll pull the tokens out of it today. I'm still that old school that I've got tokens and not cards like everybody else has.
Yeah, that's always interesting. I always wondered about that. I've always wanted to give everything away to free for everybody. And you make it up in volume, but you just sell banner ads in your store. But
yeah, pretty much.
But it's I always thought, it's like, it seemed like, if you charge too much at the beginning, it's like you're just driving them away. You're trying to get them, you're trying to get people addicted to these games. You have to, you got
drug dealers. Not really.
Have a low entry point, and I create barriers to entry, it's like, so I like your new philosophy here. Maybe it'll work out. Who knows?
Hopefully so. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Eugene, and for all of your thoughts and everything and insight and history on these games. And so I'm very happy to hear that Cruis'n Blast has been a success, just like the originals were, and definitely look forward to trying it out on the Switch and seeing how that goes.
Great, man. Yeah, we just passed 10,000 games on Cruis'n Blast. So
wow. For those that don't know, that's really impressive in the arcade industry. In this business, if you sell even a few hundred units, that can be a good thing. But selling over 10,000, that's kind of the gold standard, I'd say, in arcades these days. And so congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. We're making we're making a new commemorative T-shirt for that event. So we'll send you your copy for
awesome.
for your time period. But I guess if you got to get these customers in your arcade, man, you got to pay.
Yeah, I better open before they find me.
You'll have a glass repair job pretty soon.
Right. Yeah. That's the last thing I need right now. So.